comes to which muscle groups contribute to the most aesthetic and attractive physique, the biceps are most definitely amongst the top of the list. The biceps, when developed, will contribute to the overall fullness of the arm and creates a prominent peak when flexed. As seen, I've managed to achieve a decent set of biceps, but they weren't always like that for me. As for many others, despite the biceps being probably the most trained muscle, it is also one of the most stubborn muscle groups to develop. Why is this? Well, mainly because aimlessly picking up a dumbbell and curling it like it isn't going to be enough to provide you with the biceps development you're looking for. Instead, you need to pay attention to how exactly you're performing your bicep exercises and use a more methodological approach to training them. Look at the screenshot of me curling, for example. If you can't spot at least one of the mistakes I'm making, then the chances you're probably making one of them, which might very well be the mistake sabotaging your growth. Therefore, in this article, I'll be going through 5 of the most common mistakes people make that hinder bicep growth, starting with letting other muscles take over. The first and probably most common mistake in letting other muscles take over and steal tension from the biceps during your curling exercise, which is something that was unknowingly doing for a very long time myself, are the main 3 culprits for this are the front delts, upper traps and forearms, as you can see on the screen now. But luckily, these can all be quickly fixed and simply tweaks in your form. Let's talk about the front delt. You can easily tell if the front delts are taken over if your elbows move forward as you curl. Although a few degrees of the movement is normally expected during a curl, since the biceps also weakly assist in the shoulder flexion. Once it becomes excessive is when it becomes a major problem, since it takes tension away from the biceps. So what do you want to do instead of lowering the weight and ensuring that you're keeping your elbows locked in place and pinned to the side throughout the curl like so? This will enable your biceps to now take on almost the entire load and minimize the involvement of the front delts. If you're still struggling with this, then you can try performing curls with your back and elbows against the wall, which physically forces your elbows to stay locked in place. The next muscle is the upper traps, which is a very common in a bicep curl movement. You can tell if your traps are taking over the curl if you're shrugging your shoulders up towards your ears every time you curl. This once again takes a lot of tension away from the biceps and indicates that you should probably lower the weight. Instead, you want to depress your traps by bringing your shoulders down and away from your ears before you curl and keep them in a depressed position throughout the movement. Doing so will shift a lot of tension back into the biceps and away from the upper traps and shoulders. Finally, letting your forearms take over happens when you flex your wrist as you curl the weight. This is not only shift tensions away from the biceps, but also puts your wrists at a mechanical disadvantage. Instead, you want to keep your wrist in a neutral or slightly extended position to both increase wrist stability and place more tension on the biceps. A study in 2018 was to compare partial range of motion versus full range of motion in the upper body with resistance training on strength and muscle thickness in young men. The data suggests that muscle strength and muscle thickness can be improved with both full and part resistant training, but full may lead to greater strength gains. So from this comparison of the full range of motion and partial range of motion, the greater bicep growth will come from the full range of motion that gives us 25% increase in bicep strength, and from the partial range of motion you'll get less bicep growth with a 16% decrease in bicep strength from a shorter range of motion. So that brings me on to point number 2, which is lack of mind to muscle connection. Although the previous tip will dramatically improve the tension placed on the biceps, it's also important that you actually feel and focus on the biceps working during your exercises. And yes, this will make a huge difference in your growth. For example, a recent published study in 2018 by Schofield and his colleague analysed the effect of mind to muscle connection on the muscle growth of 30 college-aged men. All participants performed 4 sets of arm curls and leg extensions for 8 to 12 reps on 3 non-consecutive days per the week, with sets carried out with muscular failure. One group, the mind to muscle group, was instructed to squeeze the muscle during each rep, whereas the other group was simply instructed to just get the weight up. The results: after 8 weeks, the mind to muscle group experienced almost double the bicep growth compared to the other group. So rather than just curling the weight up, you need to focus on really feeling the biceps working, which often will require you to set the ego aside and lighten the weight up that you use. And one helpful cue to think about as you curl is to think about squeezing the bar into your body. So you think about squeezing your biceps to move the bar towards your body, as opposed to thinking about just simply lifting the weight. Doing so will enhance the contraction of your biceps during each rep. A partial range of motion can be used to target specific regions of the biceps. This is because several studies have favoured the use of full range of motion over partial range of motion for both strength and hypertrophy. For example, one in 2012 by Pinto and his colleagues found that in 40 male subjects using a full range of motion during the bicep curl led to significant greater hypertrophy of the biceps and a 25% increase in strength as opposed to just 16% in the partial range of motion group. You can implement this when curling by contracting the triceps at the bottom of every rep to ensure that the biceps are fully lengthened before each rep, which will also help maximize bicep recruitment in following the reps, not targeting both the short head and long head of the biceps. I've made this point clear in a few of my past posts on Instagram and Facebook that in order to get a well-rounded development of biceps, you need to train both short head and long head of the bicep. We can emphasize the short head more by utilizing bicep exercises where the elbows are moved in front of the body, which causes the long head to enter activity insufficiency. Exercises that accomplish this are spider curls, preach curls, chin-ups, and so on. And on the other hand, we can emphasize the long head more by utilizing bicep exercises where the elbows are moved behind the body. Exercises that accomplish this are incline dumbbell curls, behind the body cable curls, and drag curls. There is also a screenshot of a list of exercises that you can give a go yourself. But rather than trying to perform all these exercises, I suggest that for those past the beginner stage, you can include 1 to 2 exercises for the short head and 1 to 2 exercises for the long head in overall routine and focus on progressing those movements over time. Moving on to my other point is about doing too much volume. One of the first things people do if the muscle isn't responding well is to increase the volume for the muscle group. And although we know based on Brad Schofield 2000 meta-analysis that up to a certain point more volume means more growth, you have to be aware of your volume is accumulating through other movements. For example, on your back/pull days, your biceps are heavily involved in almost every single exercise you typically do. Adding in tons of isolation exercise on top of this will very likely lead to the opposite effect that you're looking for. This especially in non-responders, since research shows non-responder suffered with inflammation to the response of training compared to high responders, simply meaning that more inflammation and muscle damage than usual after training, and indicates that a lower volume approach may in fact be ideal. So instead, if you aren't seeing results you want to despite increasing volume, take a step back and decrease the volume dedicated to your biceps and see how they respond. Instead of 4 or more bicep isolation exercises to your overall routine, stick to just a couple and focus on progressively overloading those as well as your main pulling movements. It's very likely that you'll find your biceps to respond much better to this adjusted to the level of volume. Hey guys, welcome to the end of the video. If you did enjoy it, please leave me a thumbs up, and if you did have any questions about the video, leave a comments like always down below, and definitely subscribe to the channel. But for now, I will see you all in the next video, so peace out for now.